talking about the whole business of belief in the church, and I mentioned it earlier, all of us, or most of us, who were brought up Protestant and Catholic in Ireland, and certainly in the 40s and 50s when I was growing up, and it continued to happen right up to much later than that, we were all indoctrinated. The church gets hold of little children, aged 3 and 4, and whatever age, and starts taking over their minds. And the child psychologist will tell you, and you know yourself if you remember back from your own children or other children you have known, their minds are like blotting paper. They absorb and take in so readily and easily what the authority figures in their lives tell them. And Richard Dawkins refers to this as child abuse. And he's not far wrong. Unfortunately, that expression is associated with sexual child abuse. But it is, I don't believe we have a right, anyone has a right, to take over the minds of children and indoctrinate them. Now, the interesting thing was, all the churches do it. But the Roman Catholic Church is better at it than the rest of the churches, and more effective. So you then get what Catholic friends of mine continually refer to as Catholic guilt, because they inculcate guilt into little children's minds and continue to do it. And as they grow up, they have this guilt. The church then, having inculcated the guilt, offers the answer to the guilt. This is where you can get rid of this or cope with it, through the sacraments and life of the church. And a lot of Catholics, and we were out with friends one night. I don't talk to people. I don't talk to anybody unless I'm asked to a group like this about, I don't initiate any discussion of the fact that I'm now atheist. Unless other people do. We were out one night and one of our friends who happened to be Catholic said, the thing I like about you Protestants, she said, was you're not racked with guilt. And I said, don't cod yourself. There's a brand of Protestant that is racked with guilt, and it's the right-wing evangelical Protestants. They are every bit as racked with guilt as conservative Catholics are. So I think that's an utterly wrong thing to do, to take over children's minds and indoctrinate them. Now, people ask me, what do you miss now that you don't have any involvement with the parish and you don't have any belief, you see? And I say, I personally don't miss almost anything, but the things that people do miss who are atheists and have formerly been members of Christian parishes and so on, they've moved out because of the belief issues, the abstract doctrine issues. They've moved out because they can no longer believe that Jesus was God, that he rose from the dead, that there was a God sometime who created the world as an act of a positive act, and so on. A whole lot of that. They've rejected that and they're comfortable with that. But what they miss is the community aspect of religion, which is set around the parish, all that goes with it. And the other thing is there seems to be something deep in the human psyche for many people, not everybody I think, that needs some kind of ritual. Ritual is an important thing, and of course religion provides ritual. So people do need to, who moved out, perhaps compensate for those two. And a book has been written recently by Alain de Botton, who is a very well-known atheist. And a very dedicated and committed atheist. And the title of the book, perhaps you've heard of it, is Religion for Atheists. And this is what the book is about, saying this. I am an atheist, I'm outside, and when atheists move out, the things they miss are community and ritual. Now, therefore, some members of your group, and atheists generally, may find that some kind of, coming here every Sunday once a month, in a way is a ritual. To meet other people and to feel comfortable and share your ideas with other people. So, the other interesting thing is that when last year, or the year before last, I think it was 2010, whenever, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the World Atheist Conference was held in Dublin. Now, I had no contact with other, amongst my friends there are atheists, and I know, but never really talked very much about it. And there are, if you like, quiet atheists. One particular friend of mine, who's now in his late 70s, told me that when he was 12 or 13, he decided he couldn't believe the stuff that he was being taught in religion class and all of it. He just simply couldn't believe it. And since he was that age, he has been atheist. But he's not interested in joining a group or even in discussing it. Other people's views are their own, but he has been constantly uncomfortable with being an atheist for all that length of time. And there are a lot of people like that. But there is in America, I went to the atheist conference out of curiosity, quite frankly. I had no intention of becoming involved because I'm not clubbable, if you know, I'm not a kind of clubbable person. So I met a fellow there who spoke to me, and he was an American called Dan Barker, who told me about a project that Daniel Dennett, have you heard of Daniel Dennett? Yeah, he's one of the big names of atheism. He's a lovely, lovely gentleman, the antithesis of Richard Dawkins, who's aggressive and who I actually don't like, but can't disagree with, by the way. I'm not bright enough or well educated enough to disagree with him anyway. But Daniel Dennett is a lovely, kindly gentleman who's at Tufts University in Boston. And he started research into clergy who have left because they could no longer believe.
Clergy Project.
Sorry?
The Clergy Project.
Yeah. You know about the Clergy Project?
Yes.
Oh, you like it. I'm going to tell the rest. It's the Clergy Project. He set up, as a result of this, the Clergy Project. And it's got a closed website for people trying to leave. And the interesting, clergy trying to leave, largely in America. And the interesting thing is that the clergy who are leaving because they're now atheists are coming largely from the right-wing Southern Baptist evangelical tradition, which is very surprising. There are quite a few from the mainstream churches as well. But there are now over it's only been going about 18 months or 2 years, I think, maybe a little more. And there are now over 400 members, former clergy, who are now atheists. Some are still in because they can't get out. If they declare themselves as atheists, they have to leave immediately. Their families, wives and children are up to their neck in this kind of evangelical religion. So their marriage will break up. They have no job or training to do anything else to live. And so they're trying, a lot of them, to get qualifications to do a job. And the group is raising funds to help some of these people to do this. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Now, going with that is the question that I've been asked. Do you think that there are many other clergy who are atheists that I know of, say within the Church of Ireland? And I do. I don't know them. I suspect there are a lot of clergy. And it's not I couldn't stay and not declare the fact once I had decided, but a lot of clergy can stay and it doesn't bother them, apparently. I was in Australia promoting a book of mine that was published about 8 or 10 years ago. And it was in this launch of it in Melbourne. Was publicised, and I got a telephone call the afternoon of the launch from a man who was in a parish somewhere outside Melbourne. I didn't know he was there at all. I remember him well. He was a couple of years ahead of me in divinity school. And he said, I'm terribly sorry, I'd love to come, but I can't get something on. And we're chatting on the phone, you see. And I said to him, because I have this problem, especially with clergy, I don't want them to be making the assumption that I am a conventional clergyman and start talking about, and I need to declare the fact that I'm outside the church. You know. So I said this to him, I don't believe some of the fundamental doctrines, I'm outside the church. And he said, join the gang. So I didn't, and he's still in the ministry as far as I know. Not that outside the church, but in problems and not believing fundamental doctrines. So I think there are quite a few. Somebody asked me the other day, what do you think about Roman Catholic priests? And I have absolutely no doubt there are some. There are some. But you must have sympathy with clergy who are caught in this dilemma. Because a Roman Catholic priest who would declare himself an atheist would be out completely. He'd have nothing to live by, he'd have no home, and so on. And so he has to struggle in some way with his conscience about these kinds of issues.
And many of them would have been brought into it in the first place by pressure from their parents.
Into religion?
Yes.
Absolutely. We're all brought into it by our parents.
But it was a promise of the mothers going to heaven if they had a son that went to a priesthood.
Well, now that's a particularly Catholic phenomenon I've heard of and understand.
Yeah.
But it happens to some extent with people. I'm not sure how my mother would feel about me now, but she's long dead. And she was born and brought up in Cork, by the way. People say, well, do you not miss, did you say prayer? I didn't say intercessory prayers. In other words, I never said prayers asking anything. Because I never felt it was legitimate. I couldn't bring myself to believe that there was a God somewhere, that if I was having some kind of a problem, which was probably pretty minor, that he was likely to take account of this problem and let 2,000 little children die of starvation throughout the world while he was helping me to get out of my problem. It just didn't make sense to me. Now there's an issue, and again, this is where I disagree with Richard Dawkins and some of these aggressive atheists who say that you can ridicule people's Christian belief or other religious belief, Muslim belief or whatever. You can ridicule them. You're not ridiculing the person, you're ridiculing the belief. And I do not believe that that is possible, quite frankly. And yet, I think I am puzzled by some of the finest intellects that are in the church. I mean, the last Archbishop of Canterbury was one of Britain's top intellects. And he was still a Christian, and still within the church. And I don't know how he does it, or did it, and others as well. But I do not believe in ridiculing religion at all, because I've known so many wonderful people in parishes, straightforward, simple, many of them uneducated people, for whom their religious faith and belief is so important to them that I certainly am not prepared to do or say anything that may interfere with that. They are entitled to their view as much as I am entitled to mine, and ridicule, as far as I'm concerned, is not on. The main reasons why I became atheist and how I arrived at it, believe it or not, was to do with astrophysics and the universe. That was the one thing that started me seriously wondering, why in the name of goodness, when you consider the unfathomable immensity of the universe, and I can't describe, they talk about, all these fellows talk about figures that are beyond me, but, 14 billion years old, and, oh yes, a statistic, not a statistic, but something I picked up, and it's in one of my memoirs, I put it in especially, and I've checked it with a number of scientists, and they tell me it's correct. There's our little, what do you call it?
Solar system?
Galaxy.
Solar system?
Solar system.
Solar system. There's our little solar system. Now, the first one is the Earth, and we're part of this solar system with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars, all that. And then there's the galaxy, which is the Milky Way. Mm-hmm. And it takes you 10 lifetimes to get across it or something. I don't understand. It means nothing to me. There are as many galaxies in the universe as there are grains of sand on every desert and beach on Earth. Now get your head around that. And I've checked it and double-checked it, and people confirm it. There are as many galaxies of the size of the Milky Way as there are grains of sand on every desert and every beach on earth. And I thought to myself, what in the name of goodness would a God be doing, creating a thing like this thing, to put one little group of us on another?